Hello. In this lesson, we're going to talk about inheritance. So, inheritance is a way to create classes that derive from other classes. Classes that are created based on other classes. And one class that derives from another inherits all of its elements and methods. Inheritance is a big topic in object oriented programming, right? So let's see how to work with inheritance in JavaScript EX6, right? So here in my code, I have my person class, but I want to create another class. So I will create another class. I will create a teacher class. But as we know, a teacher is basically a person. So it means that every method, every property that a person has, the teacher has as well. And to help us to create a clean code, to help us to reuse our code, we can make to this teacher class here derives from this person class. And automatically teacher will has all the properties and methods that a person has. All right? So it is inheritance. How we say to JavaScript that I want to this teacher class derives from my person class. You will use the extends keyword and the name of the class that you want to create a new class based on. So I want to create a class teacher based on person, right? So in this way, you create a inheritance relationship between teacher and person. Teacher is the daughter class and person is the mother class, right? And here we can have our constructor, and I will define some attributes to teacher. So teacher knows a programming language, and teacher has a classroom. And here in the constructor, I will pass a programming language and a classroom. I write wrong here, room, classroom in this way. Now, let's create a new teacher here. So, var Victor equals to new teacher. And here I will pass a programming language, JavaScript, and a classroom. Right? Now let's run our code. And here, as you can see, we're gonna narrow here. Why? Well, every time that you create a teacher, you execute the constructor. But when you have inheritance in your class, you need to put something extra in your constructor, and it is called supper. Supper is a method that executes the constructor of the mother class. So for instance, I have my teacher, which is my daughter class, and I have my person, which is my mother class. So when I have an inheritance here in this way, I need to execute the super method that will execute the constructor of the mother class, right? So every time that you create a teacher, you need to execute the constructor and the super. And super receives data. Super is basically the constructor of the person class, of the mother class. So here, in the constructor of the mother class, I receive name and age. So here, in my constructor, in teacher constructor, I can pass name and age. And here, in super, I can pass name and age. And now, when I run, our script is running, right? So super is a way to execute the constructor of the mother class, right? Well, so super needs to be the first line in your constructor. It is a rule in JavaScript. So now I can make a console.log here and see the name of Victor. And here in the declaration, in the creation of my Victor object, I will pass the name and age, right? And here I will make a console.log, and as you can see, Victor. Nice. Now, let's try to access a method from my mother class. So here in my mother class, I have the talk method. Let's see what happens if I try to access this talk method here by a teacher object. And as you can see, we can access, because when you create a inheritance relationship, the daughter class receives all the properties and all the methods of the mother class, right? So it is basically inheritance. It's so simple, right? And it helps us to create a clean code and reuse our class code, right? So if I want, I can create a inheritance here, another inheritance. So I can make a class JavaScript teacher extends to teacher. So you can make inheritance any times that you want. So I make a inheritance between teacher and person, and now I make an inheritance between JavaScript teacher and teacher, right? So JavaScript teacher derives from teacher, and teacher derives from person. In here, I can execute the constructor, and I will define a method, right? I will call it of favorite framework. It will receive nothing, for instance. And here in the constructor, I will define some fields: name, age, programming language, classroom, and favorite framework. And here I will call the super, and I will pass name, age, programming language, and classroom. Remember, the super is the same thing as the constructor of the mother class. So here, in this inheritance relationship, my mother class is teacher, So when I call super, it's the same thing that I call the constructor of this model class. So here, this constructor is the same thing of this super here. Nice? And here in framework, I will make a favorite framework. Nice. Now I can create a JavaScript teacher instead of a simple teacher. And here I will pass another parameter, which is the favorite framework. Let's run our code. And as you can see, the same thing. As you can see, I can access the talk method that derives from my teacher to my person. So here, in my person class, I define my talk method. And here, I say that my teacher inherit all this method and properties of person. And here, I say that my JavaScript teacher inherit all the method and properties of the teacher. So it's really simple to work with inheritance, right? So I see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.